Hi, Blogging Heads viewers. It's Daniel Strauss of Woodruff and Strauss, and I'm here with Betsy Woodruff here today on a very, very busy Friday. It's not like a news dump day, it's a whole day. And we're going to start off with a story that Betsy just published at the Daily Beast. I haven't read it yet because we are in the midst of taping this episode, but it's... well, go ahead, Betsy.
Yes, so this is Blogging Heads Ted Cruz Sex Life Edition. I know y'all can't wait to listen to this. So, the National Enquirer, in its print edition dated, I believe, April 4th, published a story alleging, with the thinnest of evidence, that Ted Cruz has had at least 5 extramarital affairs. Now, this story sort of blew up this morning. It had, I want to say, upwards of like 2 million tweets. It just did very well, got a lot of attention. And a lot of, Trump folks say Ted Cruz is a bad person. And then you have Cruz supporters saying, how dare Donald Trump plant this story? Donald Trump obviously must have gotten the National Enquirer to publish this story. This is disgusting, gutter politics. Everybody's very upset. But the reality is that these rumors about Ted Cruz's alleged affairs have been going around for months and months, at least 6 months that we know. And in fact, numerous publications, including major national publications like the Washington Post and the New York Times, have had operatives reach out to them and say, hey, you should write a story about Ted Cruz having an affair. And these publications have reached out to other operatives and said, do you know if Ted Cruz is having an affair? And people have said, no. The evidence is thin. The video that you have doesn't show Ted Cruz having an affair. There's nothing publishable. Now, that doesn't mean Ted Cruz has never cheated on his wife. Nobody can prove a negative, of course. But thus far, just about every major national publication in the U.S. has had a chance to publish this story and has refused to publish the story because the evidence just simply isn't there. It's not something that one can report responsibly. You just can't do it. However, the National Enquirer, that storied bastion of irresponsible reporting, decided to go ahead and pull the trigger. So they published this story. They put it online Wednesday, and I believe it's in their issue that's going to be dated April 4th, although I might not be right about that. I think it's their April 4th print issue. The video proves nothing. At least the video that these publications got. And I mean, listen, Ted Cruz has made his religious faith, sort of his morality, a central part of his campaign. Unlike Donald Trump, who said, vote for me even though I've been married a bunch of times and I'm not necessarily a model of
right, no, he said in the past that, he's cheated on his previous wives with
right. It's public
the next
information.
one. Yeah.
So Ted Cruz has kind of run as the moral, upstanding, good Christian anti-Trump, which means that if this story were true, it would have significant news value. It's not like you're just digging up garbage on some random politician and publishing it to make them feel bad. It would have significant news value. It would be a really big story. Right. Any major national outlet would want to publish this story if it were true. But the reality is, there's just no evidence. It's incredibly thin. And if you look at the Enquirer's story, it's all anonymous sources, nobody's name. You can tell, it's the Enquirer. And it's really a shame for the women whose reputations have been damaged by this bad journalism. So, anyway, Trump immediately said, even though the Enquirer was correct about John Edwards and O.J. Simpson, I hope they're not right about Lion Ted Cruz.
Lion Ted Cruz, too.
This goddamn election. I don't even know. Anyway, so he immediately said, I hope they're not right. I hope they're wrong. But he also disavowed any connection to that story. What we are reporting, we reported that these rumors have been around for 6 months. We reported that the story has been shopped by anti-Cruz operatives to a host of media outlets. And we also reported that one person very close to Breitbart News, we have a quote from an anonymous source close to Breitbart News saying that a Rubio ally gave them video and said, here's video that shows Ted Cruz and a woman he wasn't married to coming in and out of a hotel, coming in and out of a restaurant. You should write this story. And Breitbart decided not to write it. Breitbart, which is kind of famous for having journalistic standards that are questionable.
Right, they haven't had a good month on this, and why don't we put in Rosie Gray's Hadass Gold's reporting on internal Breitbart chatter on here. So we'll link to that at the bottom, as well as your excellent story, Betsy.
Thank you. But anyway, so even Breitbart wouldn't publish this. And Breitbart, of course, is famous for, allegedly taking marching orders from Trump and wanting to smear Trump's foes and having fairly low standards. Even Breitbart was like, no, this is too thin. We're not running with it. Mm-hmm. So our story is important because it adds a layer of complexity to the conversation. It shows that this is not a last-minute Trump smear against Cruz. I mean, it might be. Donald Trump's family might have planted the story with the Inquirer. But our story sort of puts it in context, shows that there's a larger smear campaign going on here, kind of gives some background. Now, however, that said, of course, hang on. That said, our story... I got an email about it, but I'm not going to deal with that right now. Okay. That said, our story also details what Trump's relationship with the National Enquirer is like. It's all public information. We don't add new information that we hadn't previously reported, although there's a reference to an interview that my colleague Swin Subsing did with the head of the National Enquirer. But anyway, our story sort of details that there is a really cozy relationship here, and it also details that that Trump is a contributor to the National Enquirer, that Trump and the boss of the National Enquirer, sort of the CEO of their media company, are very good pals. It refers to some other quotes from National Enquirer employees really frustrated that they couldn't do more critical coverage of Trump because Trump should be every tabloid reporter's dream come true. There's so much tabloid stuff to write about. But National Enquirer has been almost universally favorable of Trump in its coverage, including a very recent endorsement of Trump. So that's what we got. It's interesting stuff.
Bravo, Betsy. All right, well, let's talk about this. I mean, because we haven't had a good... I feel like... So what is the proper question you think to ask? Because my inclination, like, why is this legit? We had... What can I say about this? I will say in 2014, when I was at TPM, we got a tip about a Senate candidate I was covering aggressively who apparently was having an affair with a close aide to him. And there was no reason that there wasn't enough evidence for that. But my immediate response was, does this cross the line of personal, like how does this affect the race and politics in general, right? Because on the one hand, there is, I think, a reservation of privacy that everyone sort of deserves. But on the other hand, when you're a candidate like Cruz, who makes that part of his campaign, his sort of fidelity in all areas of his life, a part of his campaign, something like that would call into question. And personally, my personal raw inclination is to feel that, like, when you're running for president, everything is public. It's far more appropriate. Yeah. And I know, maybe I don't know how I feel about kids, because remember the Bristol Palin thing in 2008 was an issue, and Obama, not that he had to fan the flames anymore, but he said at rallies and events, kids are off limits. So what do you? I mean,
I think it seems like kids are obviously off limits. I would draw an exception for adult children who are campaign surrogates. Yeah. I think Donald Trump's kids are obviously fair game. They're working for the campaign. They're adults. They are of age to consent to be part of the political process. Obviously, I think that's fair. I think when we talk about so here's an example of what you're saying. I think this reporting obviously has to be newsworthy, and an example would be McKay Coppins did a story at BuzzFeed a couple months back about the fact that Ted Cruz doesn't really tithe, even though most evangelical Christian churches teach that good Christians ought to tithe about 10% of their income. Cruz has given a much smaller percentage of his income to church and to religious charities. Right. Now, if you wrote that story about Donald Trump, or if you wrote that story about Hillary Clinton, or you wrote that story about, I don't know, just about any other candidate, it wouldn't be particularly interesting. But the fact is, Cruz talks about his faith all the time on the campaign trail. His dad, of course, is a pastor. His dad talks about how God has sort of anointed his son to be a presidential candidate. Cruz is very explicit in making his pitch to evangelical Christians. He says the way back to the White House is to get evangelical Christians to vote, that they all need to coalesce behind him, and then he'll be able to be president. And I think as a result, sort of looking into the extent to which Ted Cruz literally practices what he preaches, it's totally fair game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think stories about minor children are obviously off base. I would not want to read a story about how Ted Cruz's daughters don't behave well in play school. Absolutely not. That would be grotesque.
I wouldn't want to read a story about how Sasha Obama broke up with, I don't know, Justin Bieber. All right. And in a really traumatic as in teen fashion or something like that, right? So, it's gotten to a point though. I mean, a big part of this today was a columnist on CNN accused Amanda Carpenter, a former comms director for Senator Ted Cruz's office, of being one of the women in the affair.
Yeah.
What? On CNN?
Like on live TV, this Trump supporter was like, Amanda Carpenter, well, you're mentioned. She said, you've been named, when even the Inquirer hadn't named
the
Amanda
Inquirer
Carpenter.
didn't name.
I'm pretty sure that Trump person on CNN was the first person to name Amanda. Oh, it's grotesque. And that's why serious, credible media outlets didn't publish these rumors, because they were baseless.
Serious, credible media outlets. We spend a lot of time in this business thinking about what's fair, if we have enough footing, if there's enough out there, to a point where it gets a little paranoid. I've had my editor say, you're on firm ground. I'm like, well, we're just checking, just want to be sure about this. And I have no trouble believing that, for all the tips outlets gave, not enough to go on. It's a serious charge that does sort of border destroying a person's professional life and their personal life.
Certainly, yeah. And I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, we talk about journalistic ethics a lot. I feel like at the end of the day, journalistic ethics are no different than basic human ethics. Don't lie. Don't spread baseless rumors about anybody. Don't share information about someone that could damage their professional life unless you have a really damn good reason to do it. This is not stuff that you have to learn in journalism ethics class. This is stuff you should intuitively understand if you're a good person.
If you're a decent human being.
Don't go on live TV and say that a woman is a homewrecker. Don't do that. No, don't do that. Yeah.
So it's funny today. Today in particular, I could see why so much of for a while there was a lot of anonymous sort of background reporting about how the GOP is super worried about Trump, and then there was shifting on that and shifting to Cruz. You can see today the fear of a general election with this going on for Trump.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
And if I'm not, poll numbers are changing. Trump's unfavorables are actually on the rise.
And if I can make another point,
yeah.
I think if someone were to make a conspiracy theory argument that Trump and his campaign pitched the story to National Enquirer and then helped it take off, which is a plausible argument, but it's not an argument our reporting shows. Doesn't mean it's not true, it's just not an argument our reporting shows. If one were to make that argument, I think perhaps the best way to make it would be to say Trump needs to be in the news all the time. His campaign will live and die by earned media, positive or negative. Right. He just needs to be on TV. His face needs to be on TV. It's incredibly important to him. Right. And as soon as the Brussels attack happened, we promptly saw wacky Trump news show up. There was the wives thing. There was this threat to spill the beans on Heidi Cruz. Now we have this Ted Cruz sex scandal situation, even though there's a manhunt underway for terrorists in Western Europe who killed Americans. The story
Donald Trump, his hands and
Yeah,
Ted Cruz.
let's talk about Donald Trump's hands. Let's talk about whether Donald Trump or Ted Cruz's wife is hotter. And let's talk about whether or not a tabloid that has been correct in the past is correct to, like, baselessly slander 5 women. Let's talk about that instead. That's what we're talking about. And I think it just shows the remarkable media savvy that Trump's team has. They're great at bringing the conversation back to them. It's really almost virtuosic, if that's a word.
Can we switch to my beat now? Unfortunately, we both don't cover Republicans anymore. So
I cover Republicans.
I don't cover Republicans anymore. I'm on the Democrats.
Good. That's good.
I know, we're diversifying, Woodruff and Strauss. I wanted to switch to a pattern that I've noticed in reporting lately on Sanders, which is that every once in a while you'll see a think piece or something on why Sanders is really winning. He's not winning. He's losing. He's losing because he has fewer delegates and superdelegates than Hillary Clinton. All right? That's just the fact. And there is, Sanders supporters get very excited when he does win a delegate or two. But if you just look at the math, and I think tomorrow is going to be a very good day for Sanders in terms of the next 3 contests in Washington, Hawaii, and Alaska. It's still not enough. It's at a point where, like, it's very hard for me to see Sanders catching up. And the problem is superdelegates, which is that these delegates that aren't sort of committed and can do whatever they want in the Democratic primary system. Every once in a while, I'll get an email about how the superdelegate system is fair and bullshit. That is a different argument than Sanders
the superdelegate system is bullshit. Therefore, Sanders is going to be
right, which is an argument that some people have made. So, I mean, at this point,
it works. Go ahead. I'm just texting my editor while I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you. My thumbs are on autopilot.
Okay, no, all right. Pause for a second. Okay. Goodness, it's been a day, viewers.
It's been such a day. I'm like hungover too, so that's like a fun addition to my day.
Yeah, I had a glass of wine last night, or 2-ish.
Yeah.
Well, I hope your night last night was more fun than mine, because I just got home from work at 8, living the dream, went to bed, drank half a bottle of wine that I bought for someone else, but I didn't. That person won't be receiving my wine anymore. So that's fine.
That person's last.
So, what, Blogging Heads viewers? You wanted to hear what our personal lives are like. You apparently like this. This is it, guys. It's grim.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah. So, I mean, that's the real thing on this side. And, more and more, my colleague Gabe Devenadetti has written about this. Democrats are starting to focus more on facing Trump and mobilizing to Trump. In the past few days, we saw Elizabeth Warren go on a Twitter rant about her. I talked to Warren aides who said, like, more's on the way, Daniel, and we're down with it. And, a lot of the establishment and a lot of the establishment Dems are just like, it's time to go for Bernie. I mean, like, it's going to keep happening, but we are fine as long as this is going on the right.
Also, I would suspect that Trump is a really lucrative source of fundraising for Dems. I feel like Trump comes up quite frequently in... Oh, and here's what I was going to say. I think this highlights just how much damage Bernie Sanders' campaign has done to Hillary Clinton. Even though, I mean, you can't be somebody who understands basic rules of mathematics and think that Bernie Sanders is going to be the Democratic nominee. Like, if you understand how math and numbers and counting work, you don't think that Bernie Sanders is going to be the Democratic nominee. However, he has done almost quantifiable damage to Hillary, and that's because right now, Hillary should be, in Ohio and Virginia and Florida
Swing states.
Totally, she should be in swing states. She should be reaching out to 18-year-olds. She should be doing voter registration.
Right, but right now,
instead,
she's
having
about
to be
Washington State and trying to hemorrhage bleeding there. Right, exactly. Listen, I mean, that's the truth, and that's a problem. That's a problem through the whole thing. What's frightening, I think, if I'm a Hillary Clinton supporter or staffer, is what happened in Arizona, where there were incredibly long lines, and a lot of Sanders supporters felt that there is sort of a conspiracy against them, and the game was literally rigged against them in the state, because there were a few polling places in Maricopa County, some of which are very poor and minority friendly, which usually is friendly to Bernie this time around. It's not going away. It's going to be a lot of anger
and
for a while.
And people resentment is very hard to dispel.
Right.
I mean, remember in 2012, Ron Paul supporters made a huge, ridiculous scene on the floor of the convention because they wanted a procedural motion, and the procedural motion didn't happen. Think about how much support Ron Paul had in 2012. Now think about how much support Bernie Sanders has in 2016. You think the Democratic convention is going to be a nice, pleasant coronation? No, it's going to be a mess.
Awesome. Both sides. We've got a lot more to go toward, and I'm blissfully still saving up money for that post-game vacation that I've been talking about since the beginning of the cycle. Betsy Woodruff, thanks so much for doing this again with me, as usual. We got to get back to our respective things. I have to thank my editor, Patrick Rice, incessantly for letting me do this podcast in the middle of edits, which he's probably waiting for to go home. I will talk to you later.
Later. Goodbye, our Blowing Kids friends.
Bye.